G'day, my name's Peter Coco from Vleppo. I'm joined here by Courtney and Frank from Epicentral. G'day guys, how's it going?
Good, how are you?
Very well, thank you. What I will do is I'll just kick off the interview the way we usually do, just with the 5 standard sort of questions. We try and do it as quickly as we can, but we shouldn't sweat bullets over it. So just question number 1, what does your co-working space offer freelancers in terms of packages and stuff like that?
As far as like our membership packages, or as far as
Yeah, in terms of so when you meet these meet people for the first time, what's your unique selling point and some of the packages that you offer?
The packages we offer vary depending on how often people want to be in the space and how much they need to bring into the space. So we have 2 different levels of a hot desking membership. One is part-time, that's just a couple days a month, works out to about 2 days a week.
Yep.
The other one's full-time, which is 30 days of unlimited access. And then from there, we also offer dedicated desk memberships, which are for people that maybe have more equipment or they have files they need to leave here. And that comes with a desk, a filing cabinet, and they can kind of come into the same space every day.
Yep.
One thing that's unique to our co-working space is that at this point, everything's included. So you have unlimited access to coffee, meeting room space, beer on tap, phone booths, all of those types of things. So we try to just provide it and then leave it up to the members to use it as their business needs see fit.
Fantastic.
we also ask that they be respectful, of course, right? Like
Right.
we don't want anybody to abuse our gratitude and those sorts of things. Or if you're going to print here and there, that's great. But for larger files, we do ask for membership to maybe either provide an ink cartridge or do that somewhere else. And I think that's probably one of the things that is really unique to our space, is we do kind of that one price for everything, right? All inclusive.
Yep. Okay. Perfect. Question number 2. So what's the smallest thing that you guys would have done in your for your community that's had the biggest impact? So you did something, it was like, hang on, that worked really, really well. What happened there?
The smallest thing? That's a great question. I think one of the things that's had a huge impact is we do membership events every month, but trying to incorporate little things every day. For example now, or letting our membership know how to get a hold of us for coffee and things like that. We just set up a channel where they can invite us out to a cup of coffee, so they can have those touch points of, getting to know us, as well as maybe giving us feedback, more of a face-to-face capacity like that. I think just those little things really make a huge difference. Makes your membership feel like they have a direct channel to you. And it also, I think, just makes them feel a little bit more heard.
Yeah. No, that's great. Then I'll flip the question around. What's the biggest thing that you've tried to do for the community that had the smallest impact?
Man.
They get easier.
Well, I think sometimes we've tried to do larger events like having yoga hours or doing mindful meditation or different things that we really organized, or we brought in an expert. We did like lunch and learns, things to that effect that took a lot of time and a lot of planning. But then we found that a lot of times when people are working in a co-working space, they just want to come and work. So seeing them, show up and then never actually come to one of those things, even though they're working 5 feet away, they don't really tune into that. Yeah. So I think tried to give up on some of the professional development pieces, just because co-working brings together such a unique fabric of different small business owners. Trying to curate a lunch and learn or things like that to such a wide variety of people has become not really that effective.
That's really interesting, because okay, so that's a unique answer, and that's really quite fascinating, because at the end of the day, you might start an initiative and certainly looks fantastic on paper, but you can't really predict. You're exactly right. You've got a very unique group of people, all of whom will react in a slightly different sort of way. And it's it's just amazing. What looks great on paper doesn't necessarily roll out the other side. So,
right. I think one of the other small things that I think that we've done that's made a huge impact is simply the type and style and quality of snacks we provide. So that's that we leave in the open space. And it's interesting to see just a change in like the brand of sparkling water. We'll have 40 people stop by the desk and be like, that was a really great, I really appreciate these, or these are not my favorite. And so when you're searching for that type of interaction with your members and with your clients, it's interesting to see how a small change just in the daily things like food or toilet paper quality can really bring about those collisions and those moments of connection, to see that people really do have an opinion on how their space is managed.
I guess the real trick, I'm going to go a little bit off piste here because there's a couple other questions. This is really interesting. So so then when you find those little things, how do you go about not exploit's the wrong word, but you know what I mean, like pushing that, maximizing that, or the bang for the buck there. So you say, for example, the spark situation, do you guys sort of take that away at all, or do anything conscious about that and then try to work out, well, hang on, can we do something with that? Is it a conscious thing, or is it, that's just curiosity more than anything?
I think sometimes it's a necessity thing, actually. And there's been plenty of times where we've done a shopping run and they don't carry what we normally would grab, so we just get a substitute. And then that ends up being like, oh man, we really enjoy this much better than what your standard beverage or snack would be. And then that kind of ends up being a little bit more the standard. But it really started out as just like a necessity of like, well, we have to provide a supplemental good, right? If we're not going to have this granola bar, maybe we'll have this cookie. And sometimes it's great, right? Sometimes people, they really do, they freak out about it and they're so happy. But then, you'll consciously do that. Like, oh, I'm going to change this out, and it blows up in your face. And they're like, oh, I hate that change. So you really never know what you're going to get because of the unique mix of people that you have.
Yeah, exactly right. And look, change is always like flipping a coin, right? It's either going to go really well.
You're always going to have people who respond positively to things. You're going to have people who love change. You're going to have people who have said, this thing's been this way for 6 months. Why are we changing it now? I mean, even doing little tweaks to furniture, right? Trying out different configurations, seeing how, just utilization of your space goes. Like, sometimes you move a table and you'll have, 10 people say it's the greatest thing ever and that they love it. And then 10 people say like, why did you do that? This is terrible. And you're obviously not going to please everybody.
No, but I'll tell you what you guys would have seen would be plenty of data points for a PhD in psychology by the sounds of it. It is pretty amazing.
Getting restless, or the zoo animals needing to be fed, and all wonderful little phrases that we use, and understanding that it really is like a subculture, and making sure that that's maintained and properly watered and given sun and alcohol, and the proper granola bars really makes a huge difference. I think another thing that helps to mitigate that kind of shock is just overall change management. And things that work in big Fortune 500 companies will also work on a very micro level of co-working. So if you want to know how this is going to affect, you need to probably survey, and whether or not that's a formal thing or it's just you going over and like asking this person, hey, if we were to change out the sparkling water, do you have a brand that you would prefer? Sometimes makes a world of difference. Obviously, we accept a lot of feedback, and one of those ways that people can contact us is Google Voice, which is what you hear going off right now.
There you go. Awesome. Question 4. So in terms of scaling your business, which is not for everybody, but I mean, if we assume that scaling is in your plans, how do you plan to go about doing that? Do you have any sort of plans currently or in the future to scale your co-working space?
Scaling's pretty hard, I think, in this industry because you're really limited by your square footage of your building, right? You can't go produce X amount of widgets and then say, oh, we need to produce more, and your factory is able to produce more, right? Like you're limited by your square footage. And then right now we're trying to figure out what is our max number of people that come in or people that we can have. Because if you get so busy to the point where people are coming in and they don't have somewhere to sit, now you're charging for a service that you can't provide, right? And trying to figure out like, how much can you oversell a seat? Is it, 2 times, right? So if you have 50 seats, can you have 100 memberships? Because any given day, maybe you're going to see 40% of those people, or however that math works out. So right now, one of the things we are looking at is maybe expanding to another space, right? Kind of accepting our limitations of our current space, but seeing if we can branch out to just another location and then offering a membership to both of those locations.
Yeah, and that's a fairly, from what we've discovered anyway, that's increasingly becoming a fairly common option. Is at the point that you tap out, it's a case of try and find a location that doesn't cannibalise your own sort of location in the first place, but then is going to have a consistency around the community too. So how do you? I guess this is an interesting question. Is if you do set up a new space, maintain the community feel or the brand of the co-working space in two different locations, which presumably could have two different compositions of people. You have any thoughts on that?
I think some of that's just on the planning side, whether you decide that the new space you're moving to is going to be a different iteration of your brand, or if it's going to literally be the same. And I don't think you can have the same. I think unless you're starting from scratch and you have an empty room and you can say, well, a tenet of our brand is to have a couch first and then a chair second.
Right.
You know, if you're starting with a completely blank slate, then there's the option to build it to your brand. But I think in today's day and age, most of the buildings are built, and for most expansion opportunities, especially when you're looking small scale co-working, like under 300 members, you're going to be going into a space that already exists. And so will that space represent a different development of your brand or a different iteration? So I think for us, the space that we've curated at this particular location is very playful, very open, large windows and things like that. And if we have the opportunity to expand into a space that's a little bit darker, can it be like the focused version of Epicentral? Or if it's a place that's in a high rise, can it be the business-esque version? And understanding like what you have to keep in your brand to maintain it versus what you can build upon or sacrifice to, appeal to a different clientele. Sure. And I think a lot of that can't really happen until you've been open. And you have to keep track of all those metrics. We have onboarding surveys and offboarding surveys, and we're talking to people, and Frank and I are touching every single day trying to communicate with members, especially when they're at a transition point, like coming from trial to full-time, or why did you go to part-time, or why are you leaving?
Okay. Yep.
And then you can begin to understand, well, 50% of the people that left in the last year left because they couldn't afford it. Well, we need to look at pricing. Where they left because of the location. Well, where would they like to go? And also keeping track of those members so that in the future, if we're like, hey, we're thinking of expanding and you left because of our location, would this location appeal more? And because you already have that relationship, it's a very easy, return really information that you could grab at a second.
Yeah. I think some of that too is just demographically, right? I mean, if you're looking at a location that's going to be across town in a whole different side of town, and maybe it's more conservative, or it's more liberal, or it trends younger, or it's an older neighborhood, whatever it is, right? Your culture can be the same, but it might be a little bit different given the different kind of members, right? So I think there is a little bit of a call response of like, hey, we want to kind of still have, the same color packages, the same branding, right? Our mission statements can be the same, but we're maybe catering more to just an older crowd, or a crowd that's a little bit more reserved, or they're family oriented, or, they're not, because maybe they have families, they're going home right after work to be with them. We don't have as many single people who want to go to happy hour afterwards, things like that. And then you kind of have to adjust, right, how you handle those things based on the kind of people you have in your space.
Okay. There you go.
I think additionally what we've looked at is utilizing the space we have now and breaking it into neighborhoods. So we said, this is a quiet area. Even though we're in a small space, we've kind of still segmented. This is quiet, this is thinking, this is phone calls. And you can just look at the space and see the utilization of those little different options. And at that point, you'll know what you need in your next expansion. But it's a lot of just sit back and watch, and rinse, wash, repeat type of a thing.
Yeah. Oh, well, like I said, it would be a PhD in psychology at the very least. So, and last question, and then we'll just go on a bit more sort of a conversation, if that's okay. So last question is, say, for example, I had $1 million, which I don't, but just hypothetically work with me on this, and I gave you $1 million to drive your business or scale your business. do, and how would you go about it?
My first reaction is, I think, probably buy a bigger building, right, and be able to scale into that building. We bought an existing building, obviously, so we go back and do some remodeling. But it would really be nice to be able to have the square footage you want, and then be able to lay it out exactly how you want, with that intention of, doing those different neighborhoods. Now we're kind of going back and trying to retrofit these things. Like, oh, it looks like people want a quiet space, so we have to segment this, and maybe not the most ideal way, right? But it would be great just to start fresh, especially given, we've been around for 8 years. Given that knowledge of 8 years, to go back and do this again, I mean, it'd be so amazing to be able to go back and design some things. It's that, right? I wish I knew
what I know now. Yeah, back then. Yeah. Oh, well, that's not unique to co-working spaces, let me tell you. But I take your point, and I guess it's it's.
What would you do with $1 million?
Yeah.
Huh?
What would you do with $1 million?
I mean, we probably buy a lot of sparkling water, and we get the good brands.
I need to get that brand off you, clearly. So,
yeah, it's a secret now.
There you go. Awesome. Look, thanks for that, guys. I guess I just wanted to get a bit more of a handle on the composition of your co-working space, and just explore a little bit around their drivers, if that's okay. So, what sort of we're quite focused on freelancers and people who work for themselves. What sort of proportion of your co-working space would be freelancers or sole traders and the like? Just ballparkish.
I think it's probably like 60% of people that are like by themselves or with one or two other people. Mm-hmm. And then I would say maybe like 10% are remote working from a really large company. Yep. And then the rest of them are from places like we have lawyers that used to have a big office and then just didn't want to pay for a big office anymore.
Yep.
So they're in our private office spaces. But that's kind of the breakdown. Like we have the majority are small companies where people with 1, 2, 3 employees. Mm-hmm. And then it kind of moves on from there. And the small companies, some are freelancers, some are startups, and some are just little hustlers, like bookkeepers, which,
Yeah. Same deal. And I guess then, is there anything that Epicentral does to, I mean, obviously you've got a whole bunch of people, a whole heap of skills, and naturally there'd be synergies across, I'm not a lawyer, but the fact that in my co-working space, there's a lawyer in my co-working space, so I can just have a quick yarn to him and work out what's going on with Danish law, which, let me tell you, is a conversation. But I'm assuming, how do you guys go about fostering that sort of relationship? And does that relationship how does that work uniquely in your space?
Well, I think that's a question of just cross-pollination, right? I mean, also just having that register of knowing who does what in your space. We've employed Slack in our space, so a lot of times people just reach out on Slack like, hey, I'm looking for advice on this thing, or is anybody familiar with JavaScript, or etc. Mm-hmm. And sometimes the community will answer that question themselves. Sometimes we answer it like, you should maybe go approach Brian or whoever else. People will certainly come to us and ask us in person, mm-hmm. like, hey, do you know of anybody who's working on, I don't know, whatever it is, right? And we'll kind of think about it and say, okay, we'll send you their contact information. We'll put you guys in touch. And that sometimes it just happens where you'll hear someone talking about something and you'll ask, hey, have you talked to John yet? Because John, he's in that arena. He's actually working on this thing. There might be some collaboration there. Yeah. And just, connecting them without, or just making that introduction. Mm-hmm. Without any sort of prompt, but knowing that those two people can probably use each other's help, right? And just, I think it's a lot of just the awareness, the interaction with your members, knowing what they do, also kind of knowing who they are, right? There's definitely people who, they might be great at what they do, but you just know that they want to wear their headphones and not be bothered. Yep. So I'm not going to say, hey, John, you should go talk to that guy, because really he's on his own hustle, right? Yeah. So being aware of all those things too, right?
I think a lot of it comes down to, that's our job. As base captains, we're more than just onboarding, offboarding. It's been made clear to us by the owner and the person who runs the company, who's like, we're making a community. We're not making a profit here. And obviously you'll get a paycheck and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, what we want is a thriving community, and people will stay in a place because of that community, not because there's a printer or free coffee.
Yeah.
So understanding where those values are. I think a big part of it for me has been understanding ways to make it accessible for everyone. So you're working with, loud and quiet, introvert, extrovert, male, female, all different types of people, trying to understand how they would want help. And so I think for us, it's been helpful because Frank and I provide a very different balance. I'm the introvert, and so when he says like, hey, let's do this big thing and it'll be great, we'll bring all these people, and I'm sitting there going, I don't want to. And half of our, or a percentage of our people won't want to either, because you see the different types around the space. So auditing that and saying, hey, we've noticed that you've been working by yourself. Is there, something you're looking for? Do you like working alone? Should we leave you there? Is there a way you'd like to come out? I think for us, one of the tenets we found is alcohol brings people out of their little cocoons. We do a weekly happy hour every week. And the expectation of it isn't just like free alcohol. It's getting everyone together, loosening up a little bit, celebrating what you've done so far. And then you just throw in little conversation sparkers like, hey, how's it going with that project? And you kind of like fade back, and then everybody starts talking and you walk into another area. And that's just hiring good people to run the space and to know the membership. And I think Frank brought a really valuable part of that management because he was a bartender for a long time. So he's understood like what it takes to make this person talk to this person so you can go wash dishes, or this person talk to this person so that they'll stop talking to you, or different ways to mold that culture and be intentional about forming those relationships so that they'll sustain a little bit longer than your presence in the room.
Yeah, and I think that's honestly the common theme that I've come across with everybody I've spoken to, and like I said, Australia, Asia, whatever you like, has been it really is that melding together of people, and it's trying to, and I mean from what you were saying before, the whole community feel is crucial, and it's obviously a priority for the owner. So the fact that that's such so front of mind, it's an intangible asset, if you will, when you create that, because people will want to gravitate towards that. Brings the best out of people as a result. Obviously that goes then to the heart of a lower churn rate, and all the business bits and pieces fall out of the back of that, I would assume. I mean, it's like the old saying, if you do the little things right, the big things will take care of themselves. And it would seem that while community is not a little thing by any stretch, it does seem to play itself out that way. Do you think that's a reasonable assumption?
Absolutely. I think if you look at co-working spaces, I mean, we all have the same benefit categories of printers, desks, of, internet, of course, but what's really going to make that different is your community and how you foster that, right? Something we talk about is, Simon Sinek's golden circle, right? And like, why do you do these things? And I think if you're true to your why, as a result, right, and you're doing those things well, money will come as a result, right? I think we believe in chasing relationships, and then as a result, revenue will follow. But I think if you chase revenue, you're going to miss a lot of important things, and that will, then what difference are you really making in your space, in your community at large, right? Like, our mission statement is if we can make a difference in our space, we can make a difference in our community.
Yep, exactly right. And you're exactly right. Your point there, and if the revenue is the key driver, like we all acknowledge we've got to keep the lights on. Okay, that's just a fact of life. But once your priorities are tilted that way, the community would die. I was talking to a co-working space about, you can't mandate people to have fun. True. I mean, they're the fun police, I suppose. but the reality is that it's that community piece that will keep people engaged and adds value to your brand as a result. And I guess just two last questions, if I can, please. In terms of revenue, so co-working spaces traditionally, the revenue model is very much a rent kind of a driven thing. Do you guys look at alternative ways to diversify that revenue to try and get it away from a sole rent sort of focus? And if you do, what sort of ideas, what sort of things would you have implemented?
Well, we've had a lot of discussions about this. I mean, obviously, one of the biggest, I guess, revenue losses for us is we don't charge for meeting rooms, right? We do charge outside parties for meeting rooms, but our membership, we kind of just make sure they're respectful and they're using those meeting rooms in a moderate manner. But we could certainly say you get 10 hours a week, and then after that, right, it's it's X amount of dollars an hour. We could probably make some revenue off that. Events, of course, are something we look at. Our spaces, I think we try to intentionally have a little bit more professional style events. So that is a bit limiting, but as far as just getting away from that rent model.
The rent model's there. I mean, we've looked at possible consulting opportunities. Once you have done something well, there's always going to be someone else wanting to copy that. And there is a value add to being a person that will answer those questions.
Yep.
But a lot of times they're just not huge revenue builders, especially in our city. It's a lot smaller, so people don't really want to pay for that knowledge. Yep. So management opportunities, if you have a person with the building and you're a person with the company, getting together and maybe not having to pay their rent, and they don't have to pay you to be smart about co-working, but trying to find something that's mutually beneficial.
Yep.
And then just little things here and there, and understanding, when we've had people call and they want to rent a meeting room, we say, oh, it's this rate for the day. And they're like, whoa, that's amazing. And then all of a sudden we're like, maybe we should change that model. From a day rate to an hour rate, or we started charging outside people if they wanted to have access to the snacks. And since our meeting room rates are pretty affordable, it's been nice to have people just tack that on. And that way it's not a complete wash for us if they happen to wander in the kitchen where all the snacks are out on the counter.
Yep.
And then I think trade has been a big thing for us, and understanding when to use that. So we trade with a local coffee roaster for our coffee. We trade with a coffee shop down the way that we can take members to and buy them a coffee with our little card or whatever. We've traded people for web development. We've traded for all these things, and understanding what you already have and can trade if it's not a huge cost to you, what you gain in revenue.
That trade, so that's actually the first time I've come across this trade thing. Is that a major part of what you guys do? Like in terms of, is that something that you try to identify opportunities where you can use the resources you've got and exchange it with the community? Is that like a deliberate?
I think it was a little bit more early on when we needed more people to come in the seats, and we still had a lot of business expenses. So doing trade for internet or things to that nature.
Yep.
At this point, we've set a trade cap so that we make sure that we are still having actual cash coming in.
Yep.
And it's as we've grown and we're nearing capacity now, I've realized that more people come to us for trade because they see a value in what we offer. And so then comes that option. We've had people that are like, I'd like to trade because I can do like singing in the main space. And I'm like, no.
Thank you. But
That's the coffee shop down the way, not us. You have the wrong trade option here. But understanding your value and what would be of value to you. And I think keeping it at the very basics of food, internet, and making sure that it's an apples to apples trade and not just someone trying to get a free ride.
Yeah. That was really interesting. Last question, and then I'll let you off the hook. And congratulations for making it this far. So again, we'll be circulating this video around, and hopefully other co-working professionals will be able to get some sort of insights out of it. And there's a heap of insights in this interview. If you had to give them one tip each on what is the number one tip you would give to a co-working space owner or a manager of what they can do to optimize or improve their business?
I think this is true across all businesses, but just, if you're going to need help, first of all, so hire someone, but hire the right person, right? Make sure you find good help. Someone who understands your mission. And, I think, again, that's kind of across the board in any business. I mean, just make sure, also I'd say have a clear mission statement.
Yeah.
and that person is in alignment with that. Yeah, I mean, I think those are probably two of the most valuable things for sure.
Yeah. And Courtney, any thoughts?
I'd say businesses are journeys, and you should plan for success. You know, just like you wouldn't go on a hike and get 10 steps in and be like, you know what, I probably need better shoes. Then you got to go back and get better shoes, and then go 15 steps and be like, I should have brought water.
Yeah.
You know, if you're planning to summit, if you are planning to run a successful business, put things in place up front that will facilitate that. So whether that's software, like Frank said, hiring the right person to run the space, be there every day. You know, I know you can get a printer for $20 at Staples, but I would not recommend it, because if you hit capacity, you'll be printing 20,000 pages a day.
Wow. Yeah, true.
So just understand like where you want to be or where you hope to be. And some of that's just math. Like, well, square footage wise, we can have 300 people in here. So how will we handle that? And plan for that success and scalability.
Yep. Perfect. Well, guys, thanks very much for that. And I'll rule it off there, but thanks again for your time.
Thank you.